Live from Salt Lake City, Utah, this is the Ultimate Final Fantasy Podcast with your hosts, Joseph Golier and Caleb Schweiss. This is Ultima Final Fantasy.
And welcome to episode 2 of the Ultima Final Fantasy Podcast, the Ultimate Final Fantasy Podcast. I am Joe.
And this is Caleb.
And hopefully you're noticing that we have an improved sound quality from the first episode. Went ahead and got some new microphones. They're not perfect. They were cheap.
Yeah.
But they'll they hopefully won't have that annoying ass echo that you heard in the last episode.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah. We're going to continue our Final Fantasy, what do you call it? Final Fantasy retrospective as we go through the games one by one. We finished Final Fantasy II, so we're going to be talking about that today. And just for a brief history of Final Fantasy II, Final Fantasy II was released one day less than a year from the original in Japan.
Once again, the story was planned by Hironobu Sakaguchi, who directed the game, and Kenji Terada, which we can thank for the more story-based direction that the game took.
For the first time, development for a Final Fantasy game was based around the story before the gameplay was even worked on. This may be to blame for the faults of the battle system, notably the weapon and magic stat glitch present in earlier versions.
Instead of a regular experience and leveling up system, the system of leveling up for FF2 was based around use. The more you use a certain spell, the more powerful it became and the more MP it took. And the more damage you took, the more max HP you would have. And kind of a cool idea, but very exploitable. Very exploitable.
As with the first Final Fantasy, the concept art was created by Yoshitaka Yamano, and the music was composed by Nobuo Uematsu.
The game was actually finished here in the States, in Sacramento, California, when lead programmer Nasir Gebeli's work visa expired, and the staff had to follow him to the States to complete the game.
An American Final Fantasy, yet unreleased in the U.S. till Final Fantasy Origins. Although a prototype for the English translation was produced, the age of the NES and the release of the SNES by the time translation was done caused Square to redirect their resources into localizing FF4 instead. Thus the confusion between which is the real Final Fantasy II for those older gamers out there. All right, Caleb, what did you think of the story of Final Fantasy II?
Well, it's definitely an improvement over 1.
Definitely.
I mean, the first half of it was a story, and the second half of it was a story also, instead of just the second half. So that was kind of nice, and I felt like...
What do you mean? Did the first one not have a story in the first half?
Well, the first half, you were basically an underpaid errand boy who went around and, like, fought in these sadistic fucking dungeons to grab crowns and shit to bring to other people, to get another item, to bring to another guy, to get another fucking item. So no, I don't think there was really much story in that. But I mean, some of it was enjoyable. It's just not story driven.
So you're saying the story doesn't really start until they're like, go kill this dude, go kill Garland.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. So what did you think about the Emperor chasing the whole game?
The Emperor was kind of annoying. I mean, you fight that weird monkey dude that you think was the Emperor, and then you fight the Emperor and you whoop his ass. He's just like the biggest bitch in that castle. Like, everything around him could have just killed him at any moment, but him, there's just nothing there. And then when he evolved into, like, Satan, basically, then he was kind of a bitch. But, I mean, you land a nice curse with that ancient sword on him, and you just wipe the fucking floor with him.
You know, I've heard many people talk about Final Fantasy II, for those few who have actually played it here, and they often like compare the story to Star Wars: A New Hope. Do you think there's anything in that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. The Dreadnought, the first thing I thought of was...
Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun, dun.
I was like, they're like, oh, they're almost finished building the Dreadnought. And I was like, that sounds really fucking familiar. And then you're a bunch of kids going out to destroy the Dreadnought. The only thing they lacked was, like, the really, really obvious destruction point for the Dreadnought. You actually had to go inside it this time instead of just launching weird Wanted-style missiles or lasers at it and destroying it.
So there's no, like, the end of a New Hope. There's none of that.
No, not quite. But I mean, it was similar in some ways, and you can definitely tell that some of the story was derived from a Star Wars type plot line. But
Probably very inspired by Star Wars. I know
Yeah.
Star Wars was a big hit in Japan. It was really a big hit everywhere. But
yeah, deservingly so.
yeah. I think really there's only a few, like, you know, they steal the princess away, and then you have to go save the princess, and then you have to destroy the Dreadnought. But in Star Wars Episode 1, the thing that it's compared to, you don't have to chase an emperor for about 3/4 of the game.
No, I mean, there is an emperor, but he's just like this cryptic figure that only talks to the evil guys, so it's not nearly as big of a deal as it is in FF2. No emperor chasing.
That's probably the weak part of the story for me, is the emperor chasing. The story for me is by far like eons better than Final Fantasy 1,
Yeah.
which was just like a tiny little a little tidbit of like a story, a possible story, a background
Yeah.
story. And that all had to do with Garland, which of course you only dealt with at the very beginning and the very end of the
Right.
game. The rest of the game was like, you know, little quests.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Correct.
But in Final Fantasy 2, it's definitely story driven. However, after the initial princess being kidnapped and everything, it just becomes, and up to the point where Leon is kidnapped, or not kidnapped, but he is taken control of by the Emperor, and he
Mhm.
declares himself Emperor. Up to that point, there's not really much there except that you're chasing emperors, dead emperors, false emperors,
Right.
up until that point, until you actually kill the Emperor, who apparently takes over hell
Yeah.
from Satan. So
Yeah, he is a really bad guy, apparently. When we should have never killed him.
yeah.
Became way worse.
I w-
Yeah, I kind of feel like that's one of those things that, like, the story was going okay. There were some interesting parts in it, and then that happened, and it was almost the issue you have with grinding in the game, that you just have to, okay, now I have to spend 2 hours out here fighting these fucking monsters, and it just kind of takes away from what they tried to build. Not that the story is bad by any means with the addition of the Emperor, it just was definitely the weak point.
And we both played the Final Fantasy Origins version of Final
Right.
Fantasy 2. So in other versions, in later versions, I think they actually explore more of the story. They explore more of the story of the people who fall along the way. If you haven't heard, or if you haven't played Final Fantasy 2, or you don't know the story of Final Fantasy 2, we are gonna spoil some stuff here for you. In a second.
yeah.
You know, often Final Fantasy VII is looked upon as having this big plot point in it. You know, Aerith's death, right? And she dies, and that's like a huge deal. Like, you're not expecting that. And it's interesting because 4 characters that join your party in this game die
Right.
along the way of the game. And I don't know, I just find that interesting that 7, it has all that big stuff surrounding Aerith, but yet we don't talk about Mindu or the
Yosef.
Dragoon, or yeah.
The Dragoon is like the most forgettable one for me, and I know that makes me sound like a dick, but maybe it's because I finished the game within a few hours after that. But like the Yosef and the Mindu thing, I was just like, God damn it!
There's a lot of dead fathers in this game, or father figures at least.
Yeah, that poor fucking kid. And what is that town?
Oh, his Windrink father dies, right?
Yeah.
And then the Dragoon dies later. And I actually found the Dragoon death really sad because of that part. Like, that one kid, every father figure in his life just fucking dies.
Yeah. He's like, the world's ending.
Aw. It's so sad.
He grows up to be Titus.
Except that he's not fucking abused like Titus.
True, but the kid doesn't
Vocally
deserve it as
abused
much.
by a
either.
grown-up 3-year-old. You little sissy.
You with the woman. But yeah, I found that it was a much darker game. It kind of was better that way because it brought this realistic feel to the game. Like shit's actually fucking happening. People are dying, other than you.
When you enter into the one town, and he's like, everybody's dead. It's like,
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah,
And then you're trying to go like later on when the tornado comes through, right? And you're going around. It's, I don't know. It's kind of rough that all those cities are just destroyed.
yeah,
And I find it interesting that like every single fucking Final Fantasy game except for maybe like 12 and 13, they're always like really low populations.
yeah. There's not very many people,
And those few people are all fucking dead because of a tornado.
Yeah. It's also kind of weird to me how in certain areas, like the monsters are so brutal that I don't understand how anyone's alive ever. Because like if you step outside your fucking door, you're gonna run into this minotaur, and it's just gonna gore the fuck out of you. Like, I always thought that was interesting in those games where like you go out and you just get bloodied, and you're this experienced warrior, and yet there's like an old man that feels safe to be outside and talking to people. It's odd. Maybe that's why they all die. I mean,
Probably.
it was a tornado, so it's a little more intense. A fake tornado by some dick emperor, but I mean, it was only a matter of time before everyone got wiped out, really. But yeah, it was also rough thinking about how much gil I spent in these towns, and now like they're destroyed. And where's the gil at? You know, does the emperor just hoard it all?
You'd think the economy would be screwy.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. We're going to get to that in gameplay, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Okay, let's talk about the gameplay. What'd you think of the gameplay, Schweiss?
I liked it. I didn't like the leveling. I thought that was kind of weak. I mean, sure, it's exploitable, but one issue with exploiting the attack especially is then you can't exploit the health. And other than the very last area, you're either going to completely dominate the enemies you're fighting, or they're going to fucking destroy you.
Completely fucked.
Yeah, it's like one or the other. There is no happy medium. So you have to beat the shit out of yourself to gain health in this game, at least in this version. And that kind of took away from it a little bit.
Thank God for that glitch, though.
Oh, yeah, fucking shit. It would have taken so fucking long to beat this game without that glitch.
We have a mutual friend who's going through the same thing that we are with each of the Final Fantasy games, and he plays a version that doesn't have that glitch anymore. They got rid of it.
Yeah.
Is
But-
it Android version or something?
Yeah, it's the Android version. But the thing I will say is with his version, it's like random. He sometimes will take just a few damage points, and his health will level up. So I think they also fixed not only the glitch, but they fixed the necessity that the glitch brought, so that it just kind of redid the leveling up system in one, as far as I can tell, and I approve of that.
What I liked better about the gameplay, well, just because I'm a lazy gamer, I guess, that the game was not as tough because you could control the leveling. And Final Fantasy 1, at least in the Origins version that Schweiss went through, it seemed really rough. The game experience was just, everything was just out to kill you.
Yeah.
And at 2, you could work on your health for an hour and, I don't know, get like 600 more HP, and I don't know, you could make the game beatable. I mean, I had a little bit of problem in the last area. I had to go through it twice.
Right.
But other than that, though, just a little bit of leveling up and I'd be good to go. I'd be good to go on to the next area. So, I mean, if you're going to go into the Final Fantasy games for the first time, I think this one might actually be one to do first. I mean, I don't know. I'd do it before 1, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different game as far as the battle system goes, so you might want to get out of that mentality as quick as possible, because 3 is not that way.
All right, you want to talk about the hotel prices?
Yeah, this is one point of the game that really, really pissed me off. So I'm out there, I'm leveling up my health, right? I go to like one of the earlier towns because I'm leveling up my health. I don't need to fight things to level it up for me because they can't. And I'm out there wailing on my characters, and then I go into the hotel, and it's like 700 fucking gil to rest for the night. And I figured this out. We were both having issues with this, but like the more health you need restored, the fucking more expensive the inn is. So even in the early area, it was like 700 something gil, and normally it's like 80 or some shit. So that was a huge issue with me. It's like I felt safety in the first game going to the older towns, the first towns, and like 50 gil every time. No matter how fucked up your party is, it's just 50 gil. In this one, it's like, how can we fuck over these warriors that are saving the world? I know. We'll charge them more.
Yeah, 2,000 gil to go in and heal up your party later on in the game when you got like a shitload of health and you're just trying to level up your HP. Like, what the fuck happens in that game if you're down to, like, everybody's at 1 HP and you don't have any money left? Are you fucked?
Yeah.
For the entire fucking game?
I think you'd have to reload your game because they're
Like
not going to
restart
relent.
it?
Yeah.
That's
like,
fucking bullshit.
I don't see an escape for that. I mean, I never ran into that, but I had times where I realized that leveling up is actually costing me money, which is insanity to me. I'm supposed to earn gil while I'm leveling up, not spend it all.
You want to attack your own players, huh? Well, you're going to have to pay up.
Yeah, maybe that was their punishment for us using their glitch.
Yeah, using their fucking bullshit glitch. I had a problem earlier on in the game where I would use the glitch to level up my strength. By the way, if you don't know what the glitch is, here's what it is. You select an attack. Let's say you just equipped your sword for the first time, right? You select attack. You select the enemy to attack. And then when it goes to the next person in line for them to select, you then press back and do it again. And the game acts as if you had attacked once, at least in the stats area. And every 100 times, your skill with that weapon will improve. By 1, and there's like a total of 16 skill points you can
Your
have.
strength can improve doing that as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is fucking retarded. But
And so what I did at the beginning of the game, instead of leveling up my health, I leveled up my attack first because I knew the glitch for the attack, and I didn't feel like spending my time hitting my own characters. And so I got to a point where if I hit my own character in order to try to level up like their health, I'd just fucking kill them in one hit. They'd kill themselves. With the sword. I'm telling my characters to commit seppuku.
yeah. Never thought of it that way.
Or they'd hit like their own brother or something with the sword.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck got into them? Like, in that world, what would you do if, like, let's say you're Gus and your sister just hacks you with a sword? She's like, I'm trying to help you.
Yeah. What are you fucking talking about trying to help me? Yeah.
Except that Gus would never say anything that eloquent.
Yeah. Gus.
Gus. I guess his name is Guy in other versions, but he's a fucking moron.
Yeah. The part where the princess is gone and he's like, "Where, princess?" Gus confused.
He's a fucking Pokemon. He's a shitty Pokemon, too. He's like the worst character in your fucking party.
Yeah, he's really beefy for a lot of the game, and then right before you get the final axes that some of the bosses drop in the Jade Cavern, is that what it was? Jade Passage? Jade Passage. He like does fucking nothing for a long time, and I'm just blown away because this fucker was doing like 2,000 a hit with each arm, and then all of a sudden you get into the Jade Passage in the couple areas before, and he's just nothing. I don't know, but when you find, I can't remember, it was like a ruby axe or some fancy axe that you find down in the Jade Passage, then he becomes relevant again, but for like the big fucking combat area, he's just...
I'm pretty sure Maria's just taking care of her retarded brother.
Yeah, I feel like that's a side story that like they didn't exploit really.
And they should have.
Yeah. They like walk in and he's eating a jar of glue. No, Gus. And that's should have been like a little side cut scene. Everyone wakes up at the inn and they come out and he's like eating the innkeep's hair. He's just
And then Keep doesn't know what to do because,
Yeah.
he's mentally handicapped. He doesn't know how to deal with it. Like,
Yeah, plus, I mean, we just spent like 10,000 gil here, so I mean, do they really want to get rid of us?
God, so much gil. So much gil for a 4-bedroom hotel room, and it's the only fucking room in the hotel.
Yeah, not even 4 bedrooms.
You don't
just
even
4
get
beds.
breakfast the next morning.
Yeah, you can't even like masturbate because 3 of your best friends are like right next to you. I mean,
Yeah, no looking through the fucking porn.
yeah, no porn, no need.
Gus, want the porn.
Yeah, Gus horny.
Oh, man. Fucking Gus.
Yeah,
It's Hodor.
it is Hodor. It is definitely Hodor. You didn't see his cock though, so that was a good thing. I mean, I probably wouldn't have noticed what it was with the graphic quality,
Yeah,
but,
that's true.
but still.
Unless it, like, made it huge.
Yeah. What is
a
that?
sword?
Yeah, what is that like 4 square thing? Oh god. Dude, it's bulbous.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of that, what'd you think of the visuals of the game?
I thought it looked better. Initially I was playing it on my PS3, throwing the PS1 disc in, and it looked quite good because I have a better TV. I've got like just a plasma or some shit. I'm not exactly sure, but when I would go to the church area to revive my dudes, like it just froze every time. So then I had to play it on the PS2, and the compatibility with the red, white, yellow chords or whatever the hell they are isn't quite as good. So the graphics went down quite a bit from that.
For your viewing experience.
Yeah, for my viewing experience. For Joe, it looked just the same as it did on my PS3.
Yeah, I got a regular, I got an old TV.
Yeah.
No HDMI.
Yeah, but I mean, even with with the lack of HDMI, it still looked better than the first one. And
On
I
the
did-
remake, it looks better than the remake of the first one. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, on a remake level,
Yeah.
on the old one, it looks way better, obviously. But the only thing that really bugged me, and I don't get this, like the cutscene they added in the beginning of 2
Yeah,
Like,
what's up with that?
doesn't make any fucking sense. I
You
mean,
see the same fucking part again at the beginning of the game when you start it. So if you're gonna make a remake of Final Fantasy Origins and you're gonna do a full motion video, why would you then have them replay that part that you just showed?
yeah, I don't
It's
know.
fucking stupid. That thing is just not. It does not need to be there at all.
Yeah, well, it's weird because your guys are like fighting the guards and winning, and then you go out and you run into the forest, and then suddenly the guards like kick your ass. But they're also like raping and pillaging this town. They're just like fucking burning it down, and shit's falling, and everyone's like freaking out. And then you come back to it, and it's, yeah, sure, it's like a Nazi police state now with the guards outside, but nothing's burned down. I mean, it looks fine compared to what I was seeing, the destruction in that little video clip. So, like, I just feel like it was thrown in there to just kind of show off almost for Square. Like, it wasn't a legit cutscene by any
Had to
means.
make a match with 7 and on.
Yeah, they wanted to have that as some sort of appeal for the later games that were probably the big reason why they even put 1 and 2 on Origins disc in the first place.
When I look at the comparisons between the remake version and the original version, there's a huge difference. I would say that the original version looks like a normal NES game. It doesn't look any better than the first one on the NES.
Right.
And so the Origins version, it's definitely a big, huge step up. A huge step up. It looks great
Right.
in comparison.
Right, and even in comparison to the first one on Origins, like some of the enemies that I were
There's
fighting,
definitely more color.
Yeah, there is more color. It's less like a dismal kind of game, even though it is more dismal with all the deaths and shit. They at least make it look good.
You know what's funny? I find it odd that the Empire is supposed to be seen as this big reaching thing, and yet every fucking town except for fucking Finn that you go into is like not under the control of the Empire.
Yeah.
So what empire is there really?
I don't know. I mean, it's not that far-reaching. So I don't know why these guys are
It's
so.
the Empire of Finn.
Yeah, it's the Finnish Empire.
All right. What'd you think of the score for this one?
I actually enjoyed the music. There were some more notable pieces, and it kind of got a little further away from the super electronic soundingness of the first one. Like, it's still, obviously, it's just computerized noises, but I feel like they slowed down the tempo on some of them and made some pretty good, solid pieces.
I liked the boss theme a lot.
Yeah, the boss theme I thought was
It
better.
didn't happen very often. There weren't that many bosses in this game.
No, and some of them were very optional, like the angel and the ribbon chest. You didn't
Yeah.
really need the ribbon. I mean, by the time
I
you
wouldn't
got
call
it.
that a boss. Well, I guess the music did change for that thing. So.
Yeah, it was kind of a boss. If you
That
didn't,
really tells you what when a boss happens in a Final Fantasy game is when the fucking music changes. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this is gonna be hard.
yeah, and then it's not most of the time. Well, I mean, sometimes it can be.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I would say the score is a step above the first one.
The game was also a lot longer than the first one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a little bit longer for me. I think I ended up beating the first one in about 21 hours, and I took this one out in, I think it was about 25. But there were a lot of different things that happened to me in one that made one take longer. So the actual story part in two, I would say, is quite a bit larger. Quite a bit longer time to take it out.
Yeah, my gameplay time on this one was 24 hours and 1 minute.
Yeah,
I
just
feel like
over.
maybe I should have just fucking, done the boss fight again because I had a quick save right in front of it. And just tried to get it done in a minute less.
Yeah, one day to this game.
Like exactly 24 hours to beat Final Fantasy 2. When I look at the two games, of course, I played the Dawn of Souls version, the one, because I'm a wimp. And I played that one twice now. And so the Dawn of Souls version, I think my game time on one was 11 hours. And then the first time I played it was 9 hours and 7 minutes because that was a fucking sweet time. But on this one, for Final Fantasy 2, on the Origins, it was 24 hours just seemed epically longer for me. Because it was. But at the same time, I'm wondering as I'm playing it, I'm like, this is only 20 hours. Like, if I'm playing Final Fantasy X, this might not even be halfway.
Yeah.
And yet, this one seems more frustrating that it's taken this long.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is they don't have any extra dungeons. Not in our version. There are, on the Android version, there are extra dungeons to get ultimate weapons for all the characters. And if you're in an area where you need to level up, that's like the perfect fucking excuse to go get the ultimate weapon for Furion is to, well, I need to level up anyways. Might as well let these guys wail the shit on me instead of myself. So I feel like with 10 and 7 and some of those later ones, there's more optional things to go do. You can go fight in the arena to get Omnislash. You can go waste some time in, that Golden City or whatever the shit it's called, and gamble and get some sweet equipment and stuff like that. So like it feels there's less filler almost, I think might be what you're getting at.
This game is often referred to as one of the worst Final Fantasy games. Usually it's above 14 in as far as the Final Fantasy games go, but oftentimes I'll see like lists online that people post, and usually Final Fantasy 2 is way down there. And so, do you feel like it deserves that?
In some ways, yes. I mean, the leveling up thing is just completely broken. It is nice to have something that you can exploit and save some time doing, but like we've talked about, it does take away a lot of the story.
Even then, it does feel like a chore when you're doing it.
It does.
Like, it
yeah.
feels worse than actual leveling up, even though it's
Yeah.
taking less time.
Yeah, because you've got to oh shit, I have to attack with this person now because they do less damage, and then they do like a 14 hit attack and just fucking wipe the person out, and then you've got to go into town, revive them, and then you've got to pay the inn half your fucking earnings to sleep and get them back to full health to do it over again. So yeah, it is a chore by all means.
Yeah, I think it might be worse than just level grinding.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's easier, but it's worse.
You know what's terrible in our version and in later versions. They fix the miss thing, but it has the same exact problem as Final Fantasy 1 in the original NES version, where if you attack someone and then that becomes an open space, they attack open space. Now, if you decide not to attack one of your characters or something, that would just be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, that would be.
They didn't fix that problem until number 3, and I do think that's a problem. I don't think that's part of the strategy of the game, because that's fucking bullshit.
attacking yourself.
It doesn't make any sense to do that
Yeah.
in any kind of real-world setting. Of course, it doesn't make any sense to attack your own characters either.
No, I mean there are parts in like 7 where I think it's Rufus. He like casts some weird shell around you, and you can't move, and then you like attack the shell that's around the character, and then it dies away so that character is no longer like contained. And with that, I kind of understand it's a status effect of sorts. But like if I'm asleep, if I get put to sleep in battle, you can just kind of like smack me awake, or put some smelling salts in front of me. You don't have to like hack me in fucking 2 with your axes. Just like, hey, wake up. And I'm just like in half, just like that's no way to wake someone up. So I mean, yeah, I know that was the original intent, but it created a lot of abuse, which I'm glad was there, because the game would have taken forever if it wasn't.
It took less than a year to develop this game.
Yeah.
And I think that might be why there's so many why that glitch exists. It's just they didn't work on it.
Yeah, it was kind of rushed, which, we have stated that could be in part because of the story focus, which is an appreciated thing.
Yeah, we do enjoy that the story is focused more. Personally, I like this game more than 1.
I do too, and I don't give a fuck who disagrees with me on this. Sure, it's probably going to be one of the worst ones by the time we're done, but it's going to be above 1 no matter what. So
there's no way you can like 1 more.
no, there's just no fucking way. Come on.
It's not that I hated 1.
No.
But I mean, I prefer the games that are story driven, and that's why I love Final Fantasy so much, and 1 just feels out of place like that.
Yeah, it's...
I mean, it may be the first one, it may be the one that started it all, but the series took a different direction, and I like the direction that it took.
I do too.
And I think that started with this game. I think 2 is responsible for the story-driven Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, or maybe the fact that 1 didn't have any story at all. But I mean, I'd rather credit it to 2.
Yeah, but there's like death, there's character development,
Right.
there's sacrifice,
There is.
there's themes, there's someone searching for a sibling, things like that. No one's searching for a fucking glass eye.
No. It's out of nowhere.
Go get it for me.
Yeah, there was a lot of that in 1, and it just seemed trivial.
But in comparison for later games, even then, the story for 2 is
Yeah,
really weak.
it's like the second weakest
Like,
that I know
feel
of.
like I don't know anything about Firion, and yet he's the main character.
Yeah, he doesn't really go.
I think Maria might be the main character.
Maybe, yeah, Maria and Gus.
Because Maria's searching for her brother, right?
Right.
And then her brother becomes a central part of that.
Right, and Firion's just there.
Yeah, Firion's just there for the ride, I guess.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and
Yeah, why is he on the artwork?
yeah,
Why isn't it Maria?
should be Maria.
Because it's Maria's story.
Yeah, it is basically. I mean, that is really odd now that you bring it up. I never really thought about that because I played through 1 and I just expected, oh yeah, there's not going to be a story in this. I'm just going to have to power through. And then there was one, but it was very loosely affiliated with the main character, or even the main characters at times. Like
I think the protagonist of 1 is actually Garland, and he just fails.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He tries to create this time loop, and then these douchebag kids just stop him out of his own pride, and so it's like a tragedy.
I wonder if they're his kids.
They don't know where they came from. No one knows where they came from. They're legend now, and
Garland's seed was legend.
Garland's seed was a legend.
And he stopped himself while his offspring stopped him. That'd be really awesome if that were the
It would
case.
be really awesome, but it's not the case. It's just nothing. There's no story there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the parts with like
Joseph sacrificed all the 4 guys that die were all sacrificing themselves for the greater good to destroy this empire.
Right.
Even if this empire wasn't very far-reaching,
Yeah, not at all, I would say.
about the size of Rhode Island.
Yeah.
But there's definitely like the origins, Final Fantasy origins, of good story-driven game, and I really enjoy that about number 2.
As do I. And the other guy who we're running through these games with, Christian, he'll probably be on the show on one of these podcasts later. He also thought 1 was a big step up from, or no, 2 was a big step up from 1, excuse me. And so I honestly have no idea why it's considered one of the worst, below 1 in almost every poll I've seen too.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I think it's just the novelty of 1.
Yeah, I think it is the novelty of 1 that it was released here, and so there's more of a fan base for it here.
Yeah, which I think is a bullshit reason. Like, oh, well, it started it. Yeah, well, it was basically severed and they started anew,
Yeah, 2 was the first game, or the first thing in the video game industry to have a where the Final Fantasy, it had a sequel, and that sequel had nothing to do with the first game.
Yeah, thank God.
Nothing at all to do with the first game. It started anew. And, of course, that's why each of our Final Fantasies, each of the main series Final Fantasies, they're not connected with each other.
Yeah, there are some connections that I've heard of with 7 and 10.
There's 7 and 10, yeah.
But even then, it's so loose that you don't really know until...
Right. They're completely separate stories, completely separate planets.
Right. I mean, there are obviously a ton of offshoots, which we'll get to.
Yes, we will.
For better or for worse. But, I mean, those are obviously part of the same story. But, I mean, other than that, yeah, they come up with a whole new world, a whole new world. Every time they make another game. And it's, to me, that's pretty impressive. Especially since, as we go along, the stories become not necessarily, well, yeah, better, I would say. And then also a little more in-depth. There's a little more to them.
All of the stories, as you keep going along, except for 12, I think, they all get bigger. The stories get bigger. Not necessarily better, and we'll talk about that as it goes along, but
Right.
the stories get longer and stronger, more girth.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then you got to stick that story in it.
Oh, yeah. You got to just
You gotta stick it into your PlayStation. You got to turn it on.
stir its guts.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to have to take a break here.
Okay. All right, so I think that wraps up for our Final Fantasy II review. We're going to switch subjects here. We're going to talk about the news at the moment. Final Fantasy III is going to be launching on Steam in a couple of days. How do you feel about that? Now that we're going through 3 on our little devices.
I feel like I wish I would have waited because, yeah, it's probably going to be the same game. Maybe a little bit graphically updated. I'm not sure. I haven't read about that part, but I do love Steam's interface. I will give a call out to them, and it's beautiful.
That's true. I love Steam too. And I got Final Fantasy VIII on Steam, and of course, I think you have 7 on Steam, don't you?
Caleb, or one of our other friends, Caleb, does. I do not.
Okay. Yeah, it's great. It's great stuff. I love the achievements, and you were just talking about that.
Yeah, it's awesome to go back and be like, oh yeah, I totally would have that achievement, and then you get to play it and get the achievement for
Got
it.
100% that 8.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm working on that right now.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Except that all my time on Final Fantasy has mostly been with 1 and 2, and now 3. Where are you in 3 right now?
I am just outside of the gnome village where I have to cast a mini on myself and walk around the forest for like 30 seconds to find this little village. There's pretty cool shit in there too. I mean, I got like a free Fyra spell and some Phoenix Downs, which I hear are like brutal to find in that game, but I've gotten like 5 of them so far, so I don't know what they're talking about.
It should be noted that we are playing the updated version of the game.
Oh yeah,
Because
always.
we're anti-piracy and will not look up a fan-translated emulation of 3.
I agree. We will not support that. That is thievery.
Anyway, I know there's a lot of difference between the 3 that we're playing now and the original 3, and we'll get to that when we finally have our episode on Final Fantasy 3. Maybe next week, maybe the week after that.
We will have to see.
Yeah. Speaking of subjects for next week's podcast, because we're probably not going to be done with 3, we do want to hear what you'd like us to talk about. Last time I mentioned that we could do an episode on Cloud versus Squall. We could do an episode on sex in the Final Fantasy universe, which I would love to do, but I might not be ready for. Anyway, if you have any suggestions for future episodes, you can tweet us at UFF Podcast on Twitter. And you can also like our Facebook page at facebook.com/Ultima Final Fantasy. We'd like to get your input. We're new to iTunes, and so we're not having too many downloads, but the more that this thing grows, the more that we want to reach out to you listeners out there. And anyway, we just want to do an episode that you guys pick.
Right. I mean, we can talk all day about Final Fantasy. There's tons of fucking things within the universes that we could talk about, like Ultimate Warrior Final Fantasy Edition, or what character, what's the best mage in all the Final Fantasies, stuff like that. We can go off about that, but I mean, if you guys don't want to listen to it, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, just hit us up. Let us know what you want to hear. Ideas, maybe opinions.
Any sort of ideas for the podcast, we'll take a look at them.
Yeah, of course. We're willing to look at anything that you guys sent to us. So
so make sure you follow us on Twitter at UFF Podcast. And then make sure you like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Ultima Final Fantasy. We will have a website soon. Right now we're working on it, so we'll give you that address once it comes to us, and we'll tell you that on a future episode. But for now, I think this wraps it up. I am Joe.
And I am Caleb.
And we want to thank you for listening to Ultima Final Fantasy, the ultimate Final Fantasy podcast.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.